I guess.
Okay, you know what? We're just going to jump in and start. So hi, I'm Michelle Jaffe, and this is Ellie Sedbrack of Assume Vivid Astrofocus. First, I'd like to thank very much Liz Ivers and Andy Arnett from Thibaut Denage Gallery for allowing us to have the Zoom talk here tonight. We are at the gallery where Ellie's show is happening, and you can see it behind him. The show is called Harry What and Harry How. And I also want to let you all know that the show is extended until July 9th. So having said all that, I think we should jump in. So we are, for some small technical difficulties, sitting very close together here, but we're going to make that work really nicely for us tonight. So here we are, and the most one of the key things here, this year is Ellie's 20th year of being in the group Assume Vivid Astrofocus. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that and the genesis of AVAF, and what your feelings were about working with a group and the freedoms that allowed you. And you know, you can go ahead and answer that.
So I created AVAF, Assume Vivid Astrofocus, in 2001, a few months before 9/11 happened. And I came to New York in 1998, and I worked with a pseudonym before in Sao Paulo before I moved here. And I was doing a few other things when I moved here. I was studying at ICP, and then I was doing like some internet jobs here and there. That's something I thought I was gonna have to. You know, I just thought I was gonna be doing art as a hobby. I didn't really think I was actually, you know, building a career with art, you know, at that point. So this is like, and so like early 2000s, and then I started having this urge again to do something more creative, you know. And then I had the first thing I thought, okay, I have, you know, I would like to work with a pseudonym. I don't want to work with my own name. Because I actually, before I moved here, I actually taught at university, at Art University for undergrad in Sao Paulo. And that process actually made me realize that we're never alone. We're always together with somebody. Because like I realized that the students' ideas and works were influencing me as much as I was influencing them. So like that made me think of like, okay, I don't need to, you know, invest on this personality, my own personality to be an artist. You know, I'd rather be more generous and sort of, you know, embrace other people that are working with me, right?
That's sort of like an early bringing in of music.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. Music is like a major, is a major inspiration for me. So, so it's for me. At that point, I didn't know what the pseudonym was going to be. So, and then I actually went. I had to like this secondhand shop in the East Village where I used to live. I used to live in the Lower East Side, but there was this secondhand shop in this village. And I was, you know, flipping through some clothes, and like the guy who was working at the shop came up to me and asked me if my name was Astro. You know, Astro. Like, I thought I was like puzzled by that name. Like, why Astro? Like, it's not a regular name.
No.
I didn't really understand why he thought it was Astro. Like, but I thought, okay, this is it. I was already thinking about the pseudonym, and I felt, okay, this is a sign. You know. At that time, there was a show that Carlo McCormick put together at Exit Art, which was like a record cover show. Which I had seen, I had been there, and I loved it. I was really into that show. But I was also not only interested on the record covers, but also the titles, the band title names, or like the record titles. And then I decided to go back to the show and compile, you know, a bunch of words that would somehow, you know, appeal to me. And I had in mind already that I wanted a sentence. I wanted a sentence that didn't necessarily make absolute sense. My reference was Andy Warhol's Exploding Plastic Inevitable, which was also an installation sort of project of his, you know? And then I had this idea that I want people to be to feel that they're part of it, you know. So I visited the show. I wrote down a bunch of like words, and then I came up with a sentence, you know. And then it was interesting because I had this idea of being a collective from the beginning, even though I was working by myself at first, you know. But then a little bit after that, I started like thinking that I should actually incorporate friends of mine, you know. So like the collective was sort of born because I actually wanted to work with my friends that I had, you know, emotional connection with, and that's been like this all along. You know, there's always been important for me to work with people that I have emotional connections with, not necessarily, never people that I don't really connect with, you know.
Which makes a lot of sense.
But what happened was actually, it was never a fixed group of members. So Christoph Hamid Pearson came into AVF, who's a very good friend of mine. We knew each other, he's a French guy. He used to live in New York, but he moved back to Paris in 2000. And then, so in the beginning, Christoph was not part of this, but I had other friends of mine, you know. And then my thinking was pretty much like a curator, like curate these different friends of mine in different projects, you know. So that group would never be the same. So it would always be different people according to different.
Wanted to give other people the opportunity to come up with their own little terms using AVAF.
Not in the very beginning, because a little bit later. I mean, we were doing works at that point that what we call decals, which are these images that are, you know, single images. Back then, very figurative, that we would sell as a digital file. And whoever gets that image could do whatever they wanted with it. You know, they would sign, you know, if they wanted to print it super big, almost like an NFT that can actually manifest in the real world as an object. You know? So my idea was actually the collector or whoever buys that would actually be signing the manifestation of that piece and then becoming AVF collaborator. You know? So that's happened a few times. So that was sort of like this idea that other people could actually, you know, interfere. But the actual change in the AVF, sentences came a bit later. We had this idea of like having different pseudonyms for different shows we had, you know, and we expressed that will to our galleries, which hated that idea.
Of course they hated it.
You know, it's like, oh my God, nobody's going to understand. People don't already don't understand what you guys are, who you are. Because at the very beginning, we were more radical. You know, we didn't ever show our faces. We'd be like wearing masks. You know, we always ask people to not, you know, publish our given names. That was a very difficult challenge, actually, because people would always, you know, give out our names. But then, I mean, the failure was also part of this process. You know, also said a lot about our world too. You know? So, so then the galleries hated that idea, and then we came up with this other idea, which was, why don't we just have different sentences with the AVF initials to name either our shows or works, and also as signatures for our emails, right? And that the signatures for the email is what really like sort of like triggered it, because like we started, you know, signing our emails to different people with different sentences with the AVF initials, and people start responding back at us, you know, with their own AVFs. And then we decided at that point that we would incorporate every single sentence that was sent to us. Nowadays we have more than 500 ones. sentences, in different languages, in Portuguese and English.
You have a running list of those.
A running list, yeah. We actually did,
Right.
many years ago, we did a project with Art21,
Yes.
where people could actually,
Yes.
it's an online, participatory sort of project. People
Yeah.
could actually create their own ABA
Yeah.
sentences.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, so we're
And it works
compiling it.
really great in all these different languages, which is amazing.
Some languages work better than others.
Well, yeah, true. But I mean, it's still a very very fun thing.
No,
to
it
do.
is. It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, that's
So, but that's sort of like, it's funny because like this thing with the sentences actually end up becoming like such an amazing manifestation of our ideas,
Yeah,
and also very
totally.
spontaneous actually,
Yes,
because
super.
and then everybody can be, if you have it, everybody can contribute,
Exactly.
so that was part of like
Exactly.
the way
Yep.
we were thinking.
Yep. So it sort of embraces the whole notion of collaboration in music, and you can collaborate on, in so many different ways. I mean, at a very small level or at a
Yes.
much larger level.
Yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
and then looking back, going back to the 20th anniversary,
Right.
I just realized it recently. I wasn't really thinking about, oh my God, it's our 20th anniversary, because we never, I don't look at the past that much. I realized that,
Sure,
I like talking about projects in the past, but it's not sort of like, I'm not nostalgic about it,
Right, yeah.
So, and actually, I use the past and I remix the
Right,
past to
yes,
make new
which
things.
is very much part of this show, which
Yeah.
we can get into in one
Yeah,
second. or
exactly.
something,
But I'm not,
Right.
I didn't, I just realized it like a few months ago. I was, oh my God,
Right.
this is the 20th anniversary.
Right.
And then it's interesting. It's like a long time. It's 2 decades.
It is a long time.
It's
Yeah, I know.
a long
It's
time
kind
that
of
I've been
amazing.
here.
Right,
you know.
right, absolutely.
So it's interesting, but New York is very much related to my career. I created AVF here,
Sure.
so it sort of grew here, it's expanded in different ways.
Yes.
But so it's like a very important city for me, for my life as well, my own personal life. So
of course, yeah. All right. Well, so yeah, AVAF has just manifested itself in so many different ways. First of all, I think we can say that you're really interested in that German sensibility of Gesamtkunstwerk. I think I've said this correctly.
Yeah.
Which is really about performance, projection, music. The whole Wagnerian idea of the whole operatic thing. And by working with other people, you're always bringing in different cast of characters, but you're also trying to make the work dimensional at all times, and that's super important to you. And then the other thing that you said to me is that the installation is an incredibly important part of the whole creative experience. So all of this work was created, but then it really comes together fully in installing the work, and the framework of the gallery, the actual space itself, acts as a frame for the work, and it really makes it a way to read the whole space, to experience the whole space.
We can never avoid thinking about space. That's from the very beginning.
Right.
And it's funny because I personally had this realization at this Felix Gonzalez Stories show at Andrea Rosen, early 2000s, and before AVF. So it's 2000, 2001, whenever Andrea Rosen moved to Chelsea. Because they did this installation of his work that had this huge wallpaper on one of those walls, a huge wall that the gallery had, with the flying bird.
Okay.
And I remember looking at that, I said, oh my God, that's how I want to occupy space. And that the very first element that I thought as a way of occupying space was wallpaper, which we made so many wallpapers, along the years. And then from that moment on, I realized it was actually extremely important for us to have the viewer as centerpiece. So the viewer as centerpiece and occupying the space, how do you make the viewer one with the space around him or her? So that was like, and then we start using these other tools like video projection, performance, music, sculpture, like painting eventually, which came later on in the picture, to make this Gesamtkunstwerk, this environment that would embrace the viewer as another, as the centerpiece of that environment. Because for us, it was like whenever we create a space, whenever we think about space, the most important element is the viewer. what's the viewer experience in the space, And that's why we were so connected with making installations, because we wanted the viewer to be one installation, And then
so not read things simply as objects, and to have
yes. I mean, a lot of times we produce installations which didn't have objects at all, like nothing that you can actually just take it out of the context of that installation and put it on your wall. You always have to do something with it, like the wallpapers or the decals. It were not simply like something that would just hang on the wall. So, and then that was an interesting too, but this moment, this moment after 9/11 was also a moment that's sort of like, we were not the only collective that was actually happening. We had Force Field, you had Fisher Spooner, you had a Dear Raindrop, we had Paper Red, we had a bunch of people that were working together,
that's right.
Which it was sort of like, I think, a sort of like a counterpoint to the late 90s, very early 2000s, like this artist star that was happening, those artists on the cover of like Vogue magazine, So like these people, like right after 9/11, was actually quite like important that people just work together, in different ways, and all these groups work in different ways. And so that was like a very nice context for us, And there was support from galleries at that point too, that were actually interested in that idea and showing like installations that they would barely make any money out of it, So, but that was very hard to sell, of course. So, so that was like, it was interesting. But I think also one thing that's actually quite important to talk about is like how we work together. Because people are very confused about that, So I started on my own, but very early on, I realized I wanted to invite friends of mine to work together with me, right? So somehow then I work as a curator that would curate friends, always people that I had emotional connection with, to participate in different projects that we were involved in. And then the only other person that was a fixed member was Christophe Pearson, who's a very dear friend of mine who used to live in New York, but he moved back to Paris in 2000. And we started working together full on in 2005. We had this show at MoPA LA. It was part of like a group show put together by Paul Schirmo, and it was called Ecstasy. And we did this installation called Homogram. And Christophe was that installation was the very first installation that we worked together. And then from that moment on, Christophe was the only other person who was like a fixed member, in AVF, up to 2016. Everyone else we created in our group. And even though we were technically a duo, we would always call ourselves a collective, because we wanted people, we didn't want people to focus on our personalities. We want people to focus on the project, and the generosity and the participation was actually quite fundamental for that to happen for us, for our projects to happen.
And I suppose by not being yourself, it allows you to think in a different way or a more open way, or to give yourself permission to do things that maybe you might not do as your own personal self, or
that was why we actually came up with this tool, which was the masks that we give out in our exhibitions. We were giving out these exhibitions in the thousands, So like the viewer could actually just put a mask on and become part of the installation. That was like one tool for the viewer to let it go, let's say,
I mean, if I might. So this show that we have here at Thibaut de Nage is also related to the masks, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Because a lot of the imagery that's in here relates back to some of all of it, back to some of the earlier mask work that you did, and then to a much larger work that you did.
I'm actually going to share I'm going to tell a little bit of story so we can actually jump in this. Let's sharing the screen, everybody, soon.
Stay tuned.
Okay. So I'm going to share the screen now. So in the very beginning of AVF, we were actually appropriating a lot of like stuff from like pop stuff, like magazines and like things that we found, I used to go a lot to the public library, the image library, the public library.
Here in New York.
This is before internet had images,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So I was going to the public library and
Yeah.
scanning, scanning, like making Xeroxes of the
Sure, of
images.
course,
That was like my image resource, So there was a lot of pop stuff that I was actually just appropriating, And then, but at one point, we got sick of that. People started comparing us to other artists that were like more popish and didn't really like that connection. Right. So at one point, we ended up we started to remix ourselves. So we started to look at getting our own work and do new things with it, right?
Doing a macro, micro.
Looking
cannibalizing
ourselves. Yep. Exactly. Yep. That's exactly the word. Right. So, and then in 2016, since 2016, we started making paintings in 2013. For a show we did at Casa Triangulo, the gallery that we worked with in São Paulo, Brazil. And then had a painting show here too in 2014 at Suzanne Guys, on Grand Street. And then after that, 2016 was a moment that me and Christophe, we were working together. It was sort of our separation moment, let's say. And then we're still working together, but we would never see each other. And that took a toll in our relationship, let's say, because we would spend a year or more without seeing each other, even though we were working together. And the way we work, just exchanging emails. So it didn't really make sense. And then we sort of came up with this a separation process, let's say, that we would both exist as assumed universal focus, but independently. So nowadays, both me and Christophe, we work as assumed universal focus without sharing whatever I'm working on or he's working on, and working with other people too. So we both work as a ABF, right? So it also coincided. So the painting sort of coincided with this moment that we needed to be more sort of intimate with ourselves, let's say. So we were not having so many collaborators. We were a bit also tired of working with so many people. We wanted more a studio sort of practice sort of environment. Not so related to outsourcing it to other people to produce wallpaper or whatever. So so the painting sort of came in this moment that we wanted to be more intimate,
and a natural extension because you're so graphically inclined.
And I've always admired painting. I've always used painting as reference for the wallpapers or whatever.
You're so good at graphic shape and form and all that.
Good.
Well,
Thank you.
you are.
Thank you. So and then in 2016, I decided that I was going to focus on one specific piece, a wallpaper from 2008. That I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story of this wallpaper, because this wallpaper also comes out of remixing our own imagery, right? So and the wallpaper is actually this one. So it's a very intricate, very, it's a very abstract wallpaper. And this wallpaper itself also came out of remixing other works of ours. In fact, it actually came out of this exhibition, this project we did at Largo de Torre Argentina in Rome. Francesco Bonami invited us to open this archaeological site for the first time since it was discovered in the 1920s when Mussolini did a renovation of this area. And we created this maze that would somehow guide visitation, to the site. And because the site was never open to the public for 100 years almost, it had a really large population of cats, more than 400 cats. So this is a little bit of images of this installation. So we decided to create these cat masks to give out to people in a funny, jokey way, so people become cats, this cat warriors, and so not to, upset the cats that were living there, So these are the cat masks we made for the show. And then this installation, blah, blah. And then that same year, we had a solo show at Paris Projects in Berlin. And this installation we did for that. The only way to experience installation was by crawling through these colorful cubes that you see here with the two people sticking their heads out the holes. And we had this one painting here that you can see in the back, which is actually a remix, like we exploded the image from the mask, the cat mask from the Rome project, with like using filters in Photoshop and Illustrator, and we created this image here, right? So we created this image here out of that mask. You can actually see a little bit of the mask shape there still. And then we kept exploding it, you know, making like, turning like, kind of manipulating still. And then we created this wallpaper. This wallpaper ended up becoming like a sandal for Melissa that we designed, which is what you see on the base of this, of the shoes. And then here is a little video that sort of like gives a bit of the process, but I realized that there were so many landscapes inside this landscape. It's a huge landscape. I realized if I zoom in this landscape, I would find all these different shapes, these different landscapes with it, you know. So this became the base of every single work of ours since 2016, you know. So all these paintings here come out of like details from this one wallpaper as well. Of course, I change shapes, change colors, but this is like a starting point. I see things, I look at these details and I start seeing different things and I start thinking about different colors and different shapes. Sometimes I see more figurative elements and I maybe enhance it, you know. Not too much, it's never absolutely figurative. There's some, you know, figures sometimes, but mostly abstract. You know? And then, I mean, here there's a little bit of a starting point as how these paintings are created, you know. So this is a painting that's in this show now, starting from a mixture actually, because recently we start actually remixing other works from the past and bring them in with the paintings as well. So like the base of this image with the red squares, rectangles, is actually from another wallpaper. But these images that are building up in the center come from the wallpaper that I was talking about before. So, so this is like a little bit of the process with many, many layers that exist in this construction. What that signifies is that the color reference that I have is the computer screen, which is this color that's traversed by light. You know? Exactly. So, and then my intention is to replicate that intensity of the color with acrylic paint, right?
So you created your own Pantone.
Yes, I created my own Pantone.
Which relate to the calibration of the computer screen.
Exactly. So this is like a little bit of construction, you know, moment, like sort of like showing you guys how the paintings are created. This one specific painting. Then this is another one. You're going to speed it up a little bit so you can actually see how it goes.
That's great, yeah. Oh, that's super. Wow, tons of change. Awesome. Yeah.
Another, this is the poodle painting that's here in the show. How it was manifested. This is another one. And then it's funny because every single element in these paintings is actually thought out before it's actually painted. So like a lot of people think that some elements are more spontaneous, sort of like, you know, painting, but it's not. You know, actually everything is thought out from the beginning. So as part of this process, we created like our own Pantone. So I'm going to show you like a bit of our Pantone boards. And what you see here are a combination of different existing paints that you buy from Golden or Liquitex or Guerra here in New York City, that we mix different proportion of these shades and create our own shades out of them. So like here on this Pantone boards, you have the proportions of each paint and to achieve all these different tonalities that you see on this board. So this is the blues, the greens, the pinks and magentas and reds, purples, browns and grays, yellows. So this is a photo of our studio where you have all the painting, you know, containers with all the numbers. Those numbers correspond to the numbers in our Pantone. And these are what I call the color schemes. So this is a way for me to write down immediately like which color should be going where. So I look at the computer screen and I look at our Pantone and I see which numbers actually correspond to each, should correspond to each color. So this is also a way for me to communicate with my assistants, and then this painting becomes this one, for instance.
Which brings us to the current show. And
Yes.
Can you go back to that slide for a moment?
This one? The other one? This one?
Yeah. So Ellie and I were talking before that this show was created. It was originally scheduled for May of 2020, but of course COVID happened. And but you had a lot of paintings, the large ones, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
were pretty much ready in advance. But then having the year of COVID allowed you to go back in and to work on other works. So you created medium-sized works and also smaller works, of which the one that's on your screen is a smaller work.
Yeah, for this year.
Right, exactly. And we've gone in and you've painted these, the very high tone color behind the painting that's sort of set inside the frame and all of that. I wanted to ask you a little bit about how the yarn came in.
Sure.
And of course the show is called Harry What, Harry How?
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's of course a nod to Harry Who from the artist group, really in Chicago. But how that extends again your notion of bringing things out from the painting surface, and also some of these paintings are built onto frames, which then rather like sort of the deck chair can sort of go out or outward, and then you had the paintings all set. You got them sent to the framer to build these deck chair type, frames early last year. But then, of course, they were stuck there for the year. Yeah. And the first time that Ellie saw them was when he got to New York. And
I couldn't even go to the framer to see the painting.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So
I developed this frame with a friend of mine from Brazil, who's a furniture designer, and he came up with this idea, and he designed it, and then I sent the drawings to the framer. The framer built it, but I couldn't actually see it in person. I just saw pictures of it.
Right. You saw it here when you first
I saw it here. I never saw it.
When it got installed.
Yeah, never saw it ready before.
Exactly. And then a lot of these works have these wonderful tendrils of yarn on them, and it's another. We'll tell more about how you decided to go ahead and do that and extend the painting space. And then also in the installation at the gallery, some of them you cropped and you changed them because the installation process is so important to the sort of final understanding of how you want, how you want this, how you want the work to be. So
No, it's funny because like the large works, most of them actually, 3 of them, not all of them, but 3 of them, actually they are a painting manifestation of this dancing rugs that we made before. So I'm going to actually show you. Yes. Is that right?
Yes. This amazing music thing that happens every year in Roskilde, Denmark, which is just about an hour away from Copenhagen, and it's super famous in Europe and obviously in Denmark. And
so it's been around for 50 years.
Yeah, it's been around a long time. Yeah.
And then we were invited by this curator who was, organizing the art projects for the festival to create an environment for queerness, let's say. Because they want us to create a home that would host different projects, not just different projects,
so
but different.
Whole set of the whole building,
we created a whole building, this dome structure that would host debates, talks, performances, about queerness. And then we were the ones who actually inaugurated the space, And then me and 4 other friends of mine from Brazil, we created this group called House of Chroma, which is like a spin-off from AVF for this event. We're actually working together still, which are 2 friends of ours, Natasha Princess and Mavi Veloso, amazing performers. Mavi, the all Brazilian, Mavi lives in the Netherlands, and 2 other amazing artists, Bruno Mendonça, who is also a performance artist, and João Paz, who made the music too. So we created this environment, and in this environment, a centerpiece of this environment were these dancing rugs. rods.
Right. You see
Which,
in the upper right corner
yeah,
of this
I'm
image.
gonna actually play this. This is actually Mavi Veloso in the performance with the dancing rugs. And the design of this rug that's going to be spinning above her is actually one of the paintings that's here. Oops, sorry.
Did you have something to do with the choice of the costume, you know, and some
No,
of the colors?
no, no, there's no. Oh, no. One of the, each one of us had their own. Yes. So, and then this was like an hour performance. You know, they had a bunch of different moments happening. You know, in which all the different performers were like, you know, interacting with each other, but sometimes doing like solo presentations. This is actually the rug, the tapestry, the painting, sorry, that came out of that tapestry that was spinning above Mavi. So it was interesting because I wanted to expand the colors to space. But one thing was quite interesting when we had the dancing tapestries. I'm actually going to show you an image from an earlier project, which was the first time we actually had the dancing tapestries.
That's right.
This was a show we did in Peru, in Lima at Mate, Museo Mate. And that was the first time we did the dancing tapestries. And one thing that I was quite amazed by it is how the color was just expand to space, you know, with the fringes. And like this, the dancing tapestries, each tapestry, there's the choreography, right? So the tapestries, they spin sometimes at different speeds, each one of them, sometimes the same speed, different directions, you know, sometimes they don't spin at all, you know, so there's like a choreography, then they dance, you know, they keep dancing. And in this case, it could actually go through the dancing tapestries, right? So when I was quite amazed by that effect, you know, of like the colors expanding into space. And then I thought, let's make this color, let's make a painting out of like this tapestry that also has that effect. Like as if the colors were just dripping, you know, but also making a reference to something that people start talking about. So it's very theatrical, you know, these paintings. So there is a set, a theater set sort of feel to them too, which I was also quite interested.
Which really goes back to the Gesamtkunst, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. That total.
Exactly. So this is another moment of this performance, which is we're going to see another spinning tapestry that became a painting that's actually here as well. And you're going to see an amazing performance by Natasha Princess, who does this type of performance. It's actually quite common in the Brazilian drag scene, which is called bate cabelo, in which she spins her head like non-stop and like sort of like beating her hair, let's say.
Did the idea of the tapestries come from her hair?
No, that was like a coincidence. We just made there was like this connection between those two. We're gonna do it, man. You can't understand what happened. The very there's like this famous drag queen in Sao Paulo who created this called Massa Pantera. So that's the bate cabelo performance. It was interesting. I mean, it was actually quite amazing to show this in a setting that's not in our gallery. And it's like amazing that.
How many weeks was left to the also?
Like a week.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I love this, like, you know, doing this thing, white people's problems and stuff like white people. Or Danish people.
Right,
You know?
right. And it's 2017.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, this is 2019.
Oh, 19. Oh, okay. Oh, well, yep. Oh, wow.
This, yeah, I mean, this is like some of the paintings that we were making in 2016, which was the starting point of using that wallpaper as a source for the painting process. Yeah.
So the new paintings that you have, like going back to that smaller one that we showed with the frame with sort of like very electric green. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Color around it. I mean, these they also they have quite a process because you paint on top of cardboard and then
Yes.
you peel the layers back.
Yeah.
You expose the cardboard. They're very very sculptural.
Yeah. The
And-
cardboard came out of the tapestries, in fact, because we started making the tapestries in 2017, and I went to a show at MoMA, and it was, I can't remember which show it was, but it was like a Bauhaus kind of show, and it had this really small painting by an artist that I forget the name, which was on cardboard, on corrugated cardboard.
So it wasn't.
And so I thought, oh my God, this looks amazing. And that's immediately I made a connection with tapestry, you know. And I thought, okay, maybe I can actually dig in the surface of the, because this is like corrugated cardboard pieces that have like a flat surface.
Right. Yeah.
The corrugated is actually the structure.
Exactly. The structure underneath.
And then I thought maybe we can reveal certain sections of this corrugated structure, and so it has like this tactile sort of experience, three-dimensional aspect to it. You know? Which initially, I'm going to show you a previous show that we had this paintings. Initially, they were more random. This is images from paintings we did in 2018 for a solo show at Triangulo, the gallery that we worked with in Sao Paulo. So you can see like all the shapes come out of that wallpaper, but here the peeling was random, you know, so it was like more random, not necessarily focused on certain shapes, you know. So we started doing that for here. Actually about the process, because the thing is, so the very first thing that we did for this show were the hairy paintings, right? The hairy paintings by early last year, they were ready.
Yeah, they were ready in March.
They were ready in March.
Right,
the show was supposed to happen in May.
That's
right.
Exactly.
I had started to work on the medium-sized works that are here in the show, right? But they didn't have hair yet, right? So, but then the pandemic started, and I didn't go to the studio for like 5 months, you know, because I could not go. You know, my studio is like in an office building, you know, with elevators. My father-in-law was at the hospital. You know, I couldn't, and I had to see him every week. I could not expose to him to anything. So I did not go to the studio for 5 months. So like all these works were locked in my studio for 5 months, right? So the large works and the medium-sized works. So I just go back, this is like March, when I stopped going to the studio, and I only go back to the studio in August last year. And then, and it was like for me, it was like a really important moment, because I realized how important the vibrancy of those colors were. Because I was thinking about this, you know, like I was thinking about this because I want to replicate the vibrancy that you see on the computer screen, but also thinking that this color wavelengths would actually trespass the viewer's body as well, you know? So thinking about this light color trespassing, sort of like, you know, bodies, you know, so it actually absorbing you into the painting, which is actually interesting when you compare that to installations, because installations were more like a communal sort of experience, and the paintings are more like a private sort of like experience. So that's actually what fascinated me too, to have more this one-to-one sort of exchange there, right? So I go back to the studio and I'm completely de-energized. You know, I'm completely, you know, I'm depressed. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of like, what's going to happen? You know, like Brazil was quite poor. You know, the pandemic, we had also,
and also
the government was awful throughout the pandemic, making all this, you know, dictatorship threats, you know, like those awful threats. You know, it's like last year was awful. It is still awful, right? But then I also felt like we needed to do like a resurgence. We needed to like do like a phoenix. We need to like come back to life. And I realized the moment I stepped in the studio, how those colors were actually energizing me.
Colors, you're all about color, and colors.
Yeah, and I do have this belief that you know, color is like this universal language that not only can be used to communicate and healing, but it's also a tool to unify people. You know, and I started thinking a lot about this, but like we are so polarized right now. everywhere in the world.
Right. And it's a language that everyone understands.
Exactly.
And you don't have to speak the language. It's
Exactly.
like music and sound.
Exactly.
It's a language that all of us
Exactly.
universally understand.
Actually, we should talk about that. But the music, which is very important.
Yeah.
But then, so as soon as I go back to the studio, I go to the medium-sized works.
Right.
And we finish them, these 3 paintings right here. And then early this year, that's when actually I started working on the medium size, on the small size works.
Right,
Which the small size works actually they have novelties, let's say.
Right.
We start using
Layer,
oil.
Many different mediums.
Oil, we start using more watered down, like acrylic paint, like
some oil pastel.
Oil pastel as well.
Right.
So they had a few new things happening to that, which was interesting to see this process. We had this large paintings, hairy paintings coming out of the dancing tapestries.
Right.
We had the medium-sized ones, which was somehow spin-offs from those larger ones,
Yep.
And then we had the small-sized ones, where they actually have this other new challenges, I say. Yeah. But I want to say, talk about music, because it is a very important aspect of the work.
It is, because there's this moment where you can't help but think about Kandinsky, I think.
Yeah.
Kandinsky's early works, there's something symbolic about them. And of course, he was thinking about music, and
even the later works.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm personally a little less for the Bauhaus works, but that might be maybe a geometric thing on my end. But all those other works.
Right. Yeah.
Totally. They're so beautiful. And just
there is this connection.
Yeah.
We've always wanted our goal was always to provide a music-like experience.
Yes, exactly.
Which is the work just traversing.
Right. Well, it's soulful. It goes straight to your soul.
Exactly.
And you don't need to understand the language that we walk around with all.
Yeah, and then music makes you dance. I also love this ethereal, ethereal art form that has a body reaction.
Right. And color, of course, just
and
communicates directly. And like the sun, when the sun comes out, everyone goes out, right? Exactly. It's the same thing. And so you have this color and you have this vibrancy. And everyone responds to it. Everybody responds.
This is funny because there's this one work by Laurie Anderson, which is a very iconic work for me, that made me realize that is it called Telephone? I forget.
Oh, the one where she's and she's leaving a message.
No,
not that one.
It was a show. I think it was a show outside. It was an exit art. I don't remember.
Oh, that's right.
It's a table and a chair.
Yes.
And then there are instructions on the table that tell you to sit down and put your elbows on the table, and then open your hands, and then put your hands on your ears. Right. And the minute you do that, you start listening to music. Right. Because there's music on the floor, spinning, coming through the table, through your bones, and onto your ears. Right. So I thought, oh my God, it's this music. It's just music goes through your body.
Exactly.
You expand. It's So that was oh my God, and then. That's what we want to do with our installations, and then that's what we want to do with our colors. We want the color to go inside your body.
Yes.
So,
well, it does.
Hopefully, it does.
Color like sound goes to your spirit.
Yeah, exactly.
It goes straight to your spirit.
Exactly. So those are very important elements of this show for me. And I think we're heading more and more into this direction soon.
Do we have a time check here? You know what time it is? All right, so
what is it?
We're at an hour.
Oh, yeah.
About 7.
Okay.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, does somebody have questions?
Yes, that's true. Does anyone have questions? Oh, great. Hi, Glenn. How do we see Glenn's question? We're not.
I think we need to, how do we see that?
Hold on, we're not seeing it. Yeah, thanks, Liz. Come on.
I guess it's back here.
Yeah,
but it's not showing.
Okay, I'll read it to you.
Perfect, thanks. All right, hang on, Glenn.
Oh, here, I see it.
Oh, there it is. The mention of self-cannibalizing makes me think of the anthropophagic manifesto of 1928 by the Brazilian modernist Oswaldo de Andrade. Was that, John de Andrade?
Oswaldo de Andrade.
Yeah, Andrade.
Andrade.
Yes. Is that a reference Ellie is interested in? I don't know.
Yes, definitely it was the starting point of cannibalism, let's say, in Brazil, which was actually more fully manifested in the 60s with Ego de Sica and Mutantes, this band from late 60s and early 70s, which really took that to another level. You know,
I mean, actual?
no, not actual, but like
okay.
more, you know,
The
like
idea.
mixing different,
Right,
the whole
right,
idea of
right.
anthropophagia in Brazil, because we're so, you know, obsessed about the foreigner. There's like so much, you know, like there's so.
Can you explain anthropophagia a little
The
bit?
idea is actually to absorb the foreigner and remix it with your own,
Got it.
and then make and do something else.
Yeah, well, that's what art does.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
So-
anyone who makes anything, I mean, that's
Definitely,
art,
yeah.
research, anything. You're always expanding upon something that someone else has done. You take it in, and you regroup and you rethink
Yes,
about it, right?
yeah.
And you put it out there.
So Caetano Veloso, you
Yeah.
know, Mutantes, Ego de Sica, they were
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
they were the ones, in my opinion, who actually really made that
Mm.
cannibalism happen
Mhm,
in
mhm.
their art forms. You
And
know?
were you thinking about that when you decided to go back into your own work and do that, or you just sort of were?
It was a reference from the beginning, even
Right,
when
right.
before I
So,
started doing
yes.
it, because of appropriation, you know,
Right,
that
sure,
we were doing
yeah.
from the very beginning, you know,
Yeah.
appropriating other images, you know, from other people, you know, like this and that. That was
Yeah.
complete. It was a reference from the very beginning.
Right.
And nowadays we cannibalize ourselves. So like, so that's yes, so it's a reference. Yeah. But there's a question from Natalie too.
What's next? What is keeping you busy and astro-focused?
We just opened like a public art project in Miami
Oh, wow.
at a public hospital called Jackson North.
Okay,
It's a project that we did it through Miami-Dade,
okay.
and it started in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, and we just finished it like right now.
Okay.
So we redid the emergency entrance
Mhm,
of the hospital,
Wow.
and also we installed 3 large painted metal murals on the 3 towers that the hospital has.
Wow.
So we are really into public projects.
Right.
I'm applying I'm finalist for 2 public projects, one in LA and one in San Francisco. And we are trying to make our roller skate rink project, which is a project we did in 2004 in Central Park through the Public Art Fund.
Right.
So that started to manifest in different places since 2014. When that project hit 10 years, people discovered it somehow.
Yeah.
And so it has happened in Buenos Aires, it happened in San Francisco, it happened like in Hamburg,
Wow.
and then
Cool.
we're trying to take it to New Orleans
Oh,
next year. So
Right.
then hopefully
Great.
that's going to happen. So yeah,
Yep.
yeah, there's always a bunch of stuff happening. I'm actually creating a show too. There's like this show that is my first official curatorship project for MAM, which is the Museum of Modern Art in São Paulo.
Oh, nice.
And I'm very interested on the work of these 2 queer tapestry artists from the past. They both passed, Roberto Nicola and Jacques Boucher, who produced amazing 3-dimensional tapestries in the early 70s throughout the 80s. And they used to work together. They had a fight, and then they never worked together again. And then I'm bringing them back together for like a show of focus on their 2-dimensional tapestries. Yeah.
Very cool. Any other questions, or?
I can show you some more images.
Wrap up soon.
Zoom. I think it's going to show image of the show, I guess.
Yeah.
Whoever has
There are Tibor
been
Naj,
here. These are images from the show here at Tibor.
which again is on through July 9th.
And then I'm going to go to the actual paintings. Oh, actually, this is interesting. This is a painting that's here, which was not part of the Dancing Tapestries from Roskilde, and then it became a painting first, but then after becoming a painting, I turned it back into a tapestry, which is, this is an installation we did early last year at the Armory show. And that's the tapestry incarnation of that painting that I showed before, which is here in this show. And then more shots. So you see like the corrugated surface coming through certain areas.
Yeah, this is great. This has acetate on the top.
Yeah, this, oh, yeah,
On this top right corner.
exactly.
Mm. Wow.
So you see, we start going very detailed on this peeling of the outer surface of the cardboard panels too, as you can see, revealing this corrugated structure.
Mm.
A lot of people ask me if they're collages. It's not collages.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I think somebody else has
They're
it.
layered. Another question?
I think so. Let's see.
Okay. Let's go to that.
Having a hard time accessing the.
And we're trying to get to the question.
What is it, Liz? Can you tell us? Somehow I can't see it.
It's more of a comment.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good.
I find things with this back and forward.
Okay.
All right. Great. Well, I think.
And Reggie asked, thinking about artistic collaboration, are there of G's then?
Oh, the quilt people. The women who were part of a collective called G's Bend, and they made quilts together. There was a marvelous show at the Whitney 10 or 15 years ago already.
No, I missed that. I'll look into it.
But people are really, I mean, now that they're really out and
Uh-huh.
well known, yeah, they make kind of marvelous things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Great, look at
Lots of ways to be a collective.
that.
All right, well, I think we're going to sign off. We thank you very much for joining us tonight and tuning in and
Thank you.
seeing Ellie's really great show here. And thank you again to Tibor Denage, to Andy Arnett, and Liz Ivers, making it all happen.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Ciao.